This is Dead Serious, a show about short horror stories worthy of discussion. I'm Dead Palette, a clairvoyant with a startling porthole. At this moment in non-time, we're tackling a creepypasta called the Eddy and Eddy Creepypasta. Lost episode Creepypasta. So, haven't read this one. Won't post it if it's not worthy of discussion. I'll be reading the story and interjecting commentary wherever I so fucking please. Now, getting right into it. As you may know, the popular show, Ed, Edd and Eddy, has been running for a long time. However, between October 7th, 2003 and October 1st, 2003, episode 34 was accidentally released 1 week before it was scheduled to. So right off the bat, I don't know why they're telling us that Ed, Edd and Eddy is a show that has been running for a long time. It hasn't been running for that long a time compared to some other shows, but that an episode was released a week before it was supposed to. I like that. Good, got it. Moving on. It was also known that some around the office, the primary writer had been sick with the flu, and instead was going on to make episode 34. The show was supposed to replay episode 1 at 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time is what they mean, I guess. People reported a very disturbing new episode on Cartoon Network. Some children were unfortunate enough to see it. So, little grammatically weird there. And I also want to know who the primary writer is, what their name is. I don't want to research this stuff for myself. You're the one telling me this stuff. I shouldn't have to go look this up. And two, who is telling me that they are sick? Where am I getting this information from? These details are important. The devil is in the details, quite literally in Creepypasta. That is where you shock people and horrify them by getting them immersed in this world with the real world details. And if the real world details match up with my experiences and other sources, then that's telling me that this story is real, even if it has a little grain of bullshit in it. That bit of bullshit becomes real and creeps me out. Continuing on. Apparently, the quality of the episode was mediocre when held to regular standards. The animation was choppy. Sound was constricted and very muffled, like most Eddy episodes. Weird show with weird production values. Anyway, reports of a line running up and down, similar to a crappy VHS, were received. Oh, that's weird phrasing. That's some weird phrasing. Reports of a line running up and down the episode, similar to a crappy VHS tape, were received. No, that's weird. That's weird. Reports were received of a line running up and down, similar to a crappy VHS tape. They should have phrased it that way. Scenery was described as overwhelmingly dark and depressing without changing props and other background objects. Stormy looking. Not going to pass judgment on that. I can't tell whether I like that or not. I'm kind of fickle on that. Characters also behaved oddly. Instead of the normal goofy hijinks-inspired personalities, viewers complained they were extremely agitated, gratuitously hateful towards each other, and constantly about to begin sobbing after lines. So the sobbing after lines thing is clearly taken from Dead Bart. They could cut that part out. It's so clearly lifted from that and turned into a cliche that it's very distasteful. The idea of them being agitated it's a much more Ed and Eddy quality thing. That's something that you would expect from the show, just not to an extreme. So them taking that to an extreme is not necessarily a bad idea. So continuing, the protagonist had a very bad lisp. No one knows why, but he spoke with a sexual tone that further bothered viewers. The protagonist. So who's the protagonist? Ed, or Eddy? They're all the protagonist. To the degree that you can have a quote-unquote protagonist. That's a weird way to describe it. I think they're talking about Double D, the one that has a lisp already? I don't know. I was one of these viewers. The episode began with Eddy walking down the street with Ed. I noted that Ed was missing. Double D was missing. There was an angular shot coming from in front of to show them walking towards the viewer. He, Eddy, was wearing the angry look he does when someone goes wrong. When something goes wrong. I'm sorry, I can't read. His eyes were red around the iris. Ed looked absolutely forlorn and practically drugged behind Eddy, tears in his eyes, which were both lazy and looking in opposite directions. So again, this is being lifted straight from Dead Bart, specifically, no, from Squidward Suicide, looking absolutely forlorn. I think that's the precise phrasing that they have in Squidward Suicide. So that's not good form. You can do better, my friend. Kevin, the series antagonist, was riding his bike opposed to the Eds, towards them. The shot became blurry, and low moans were heard coming from Eddy before Kevin hit him, which never happened because the screen went black. So again, the idea of moans. Oh yeah, the sexual tone thing. I kind of like the sexual tone thing. That's fucking weird. You wouldn't really expect that from Ed and Eddy. There's a weird bit of body horror with Ed and Eddy where they would like eat the jawbreakers and their faces would become like all distorted and shit from eating the jawbreakers. That would be a cool thing to explore. That's already some fucking nightmare fuel right there. But anyway, moving on. The screen then snapped back to reality. Oops, there goes gravity. The snapped back to Kevin and was again headed towards Eddy. The view was so blurry this time that all I saw was a green blob headed towards a yellow one. Again, a low moan. Only this time, it sounded like the microphone was broken, and loud static greatly overshadowed the moan. So the blurs, again, taken straight from Dead Bart. This is something I talk about ad nauseum, I know, but you got to understand what the structure is doing. There is a skeleton there being presented to you in Dead Bart. And what you do with that skeleton, the meat you put on those bones, has to be different than Dead Bart. So the idea of there being a lost episode, an episode that wasn't supposed to be seen, and then it ends in some shocking revelation. I hope we get a good shocking revelation here. If this story has a good shocking revelation at the end, I will turn on a dime and say that this story is, I wasn't giving it enough credit. But as it is right now, I feel like the meat of the bones, the way that everything is characterized, is just the same thing that's happened with Dead Bart. The idea of a lost episode is cliche and everything, but it still can be done correctly. It's still possible in 2016 to write a good lost episode story. And so I'm going to be hard on this person who wrote this because I want them to do better. A claymation sequence of Double D sleeping with Eddy's bed came up. Honestly, it may have just been the abruptness, but I jumped and shivered. Waking up and getting out of bed, he moved oddly around the circular room, a fast pitter-patter of footsteps being the only audio. The step sounds were very clearly as I was shown a bird's eye of him scampering around the room. There were no visible doors. Ooh, that's a good image. I like that. No doors. No real fake doors. Ed began screeching, sounding like a Fisher cat, as he moved wildly around the cell of the room faster and faster until the screen began blurring again. The purple room's color swallowed the now orange blur. Okay, so now we're getting a very specific kind of blurring. The blurring in Dead Bart was like random splotches was the description. This is something very characteristic. If they would have started with this has some punch to it. I like this. The idea of him being in this room and him moving around very manic, going crazy. The character Double D is already a very he's a hypochondriac. He's very he has OCD tendencies. Whether he has that or not, I'm sure people are going to get mad at me now for saying OCD even. He has these qualities to his character that are absolutely interesting, and I love that character for that. And now we're seeing this manifest in a very creepy manner. That's good. Still hoping that there's a punch at the end, though. An extreme close-up of Eddy's front door sat in absolute silence for a maddeningly long time, at least 2 minutes of dead silence. In a door. Okay, good image too. Next we see Jimmy and Sarah at a doctor of some sort, probably oral. God damn it, Brandon. Jimmy obstructed in view by a hanging lamp, is crying loudly with Sarah trying to comfort him in an unusually warm fashion. It hurts, Sarah, it hurts. Suddenly, the door of the room is smashed open by a new character, a dentist. His face wasn't shown because he was tall enough to be out of the shot. Sarah was escorted out of the room. Jimmy was shown. His headgear was mangled, the front bent upwards, stretching his lip, very high tearing proportions. The front of his gums were trickling blood, and his teeth were missing. The disturbing part was that he had lost both arms and legs beforehand, and sat paraplegic? So that part was just skipped over. Like, that's the issue. He's paraplegic now? And now, okay, whatever. I almost cried as I came to the conclusion that others had beaten him up and bent his headgear. The camera stayed on his mangled face for seconds, still as a picture, silent as ever. You would think that it would be moving and that they would animate that. I don't know. Whatever. Commercials came on. We were instantly assaulted with a very hairy Rolf in his darkened shed, fisting a cow repeatedly? What? Do they mean like punching or fisting in the anus, like, or in the vag? What do we mean? Fisting a fucking cow. The visual loops and gets blurry again as the scene pans out. Oh my god. Does this person know what fisting means? The person writing this? Naz is reading a magazine on her couch. The quality is now perfect. That's okay. Whatever. Eddy is now alone without Ed. The quality declines worse from there than before and is still walking. I'm going to say that because I made that sentence sound stupid and it wasn't. The quality declines worse than before and he's still walking. The sun is now lightening the mood somewhat as he smiles and begins running. The door is shown again, and we see through Ed's eyes as he reaches out and opens it. The house is nice and bright, but a very, very badly played violin is blaring. The audio is in the scene as he makes his way through the house. Eddy opens the door to his room. Johnny is shown under Naz's couch cushion as he crawls out on all fours in a comedic way and pops up behind her, still oblivious. I laugh because someone forgot to draw his eyes, and I thought of a mole. Suddenly, I stopped laughing as he started swallowing her head, still in a cartoonish fashion, of course. But this was different. He and she stayed like this until she started kicking and struggling. Johnny held her like this until she went limp. A zoom in on his face revealed extremely small human eyes. Double D was laying on Eddy's floor, no longer claymation. The camera showed Eddy's house for the remainder of the episode, about 3 minutes. The next program began on the spot. So, I'm going to go through a hypothetical here. What if, instead of this being a lost episode, we strip out Ed and Eddy? We take Ed and Eddy out of the equation. These are all original characters, and this is all being animated in an original way, just swapping out the characters for OCs don't steal. So we're completely getting rid of the lost episode angle, and this isn't something that actually aired. Let's just imagine that this is a cartoon that you can watch out of context, and it's just an experimental cartoon that's disturbing. That would be wonderful. It has all kinds of wonderful, disturbing images, like the kind of stuff that you would see from Jan Schwinkmeyer, or like a Tool commercial, or Aphex Twins or something like this. Aphex Twin, not plural. If we just had this as an experimental animation, that would be really cool and interesting, and I would be a fan of it. But qualitatively, this isn't Creepypasta. Creepypasta should be shooting for realism. This story has no desire to be realistic at all. So it begs the question, why write it this way? Well, one, you would write this because animating is really hard and a lot of work. And so this person wanted to get these ideas out there. They're not bad ideas. They're cool ideas. Interesting. Just not at all believable in any fucking way. It is a completely different kind of horror and doesn't belong on the Creepypasta Wikia. doesn't have that reveal that I was looking for, but it doesn't need it. That's not what this story is seeking to accomplish. What the story is seeking to accomplish is having interesting images. It does that very well. It's just not creepypasta. Like this story, really enjoyed it. Want to know what your feelings are in the comments below. Do you feel that the story has merit outside of the world of creepypasta? Do you feel like this would be a cool thing to actually see animated? Because I sure as shit do. These are some cool ideas. I'm done talking.